Welcome to What's the Deal with Sam? Starring Sam Lilly. Join Sam as he discusses a wide variety of topics.
Fan mail.
Now let's start the show.
Thank you. What's the deal with being a gamer? It's like being a film buff with the ground. So, this is something that I guess, I don't know if I've talked about on the show or not, but I've just talked about it a lot in general, and it's something that comes up a lot because I personally would call myself a gamer, and I'm on the internet a lot where people talk about what things will classify you as a gamer or not a gamer, and it's something that I find kind of interesting, I guess, just because it's I don't know, like it's just because to me it is interesting, I suppose. I just I find it as a point of interest to me. To like, I feel like I should have some say in what I think being a gamer is if I'm going to call myself one, and I guess it's something that's weird because I fall kind of in the middle on this category where I feel like a lot of people either think it's like so trivial and stupid and they don't really care, right? Like they think there's nothing to the term anymore because it's thrown around so much, so loosely. And like that's like, I understand why people would think that. I don't believe that, but again, it is thrown around a lot, and I guess it maybe should be treated with a little more respect. I think it should be taken more seriously than just like a whatever thing to describe anybody who has played a game ever, you know. But at the same time, I don't think it should be taken so seriously that you have to, you know, make that part of who you are as a human being. As far as like, you shouldn't be confined to certain things just to keep calling yourself a gamer. You shouldn't feel like you have to be a gamer to be part of it. You know, you have to fit some kind of mold to be a gamer. I think that's also ridiculous and damaging. And it's like, you know, it shouldn't. You shouldn't have to, I guess, fit into this stereotype or this, you know, this generally accepted norm to be considered a gamer, I guess, because it is, you know, with something like playing video games, like who the fuck cares if you necessarily are classified one as not? It really only matters, or really should only matter to you. And that's why I think it's a really subjective thing, and it's really stupid to, you know, it's interesting to talk about. It's interesting to be like what you think a gamer is, but I think it is also a little bit ridiculous to be like, no, like, you're not a gamer because you don't fit my definition. You could say, like, you don't fit my definition, and I would consider you one, I guess, and still have that be a somewhat reasonable, you know, scenario. But, like, you can't just jump up and be like, oh, man, like, no, you're totally wrong because what I said is right, or whatever. Like, I don't know, it's weird. It's definitely weird. And to me, I guess, if we're already down this rabbit hole right now, I would say that if you're a gamer, like, to me, the term means someone who makes a connection with games, who isn't just playing video games, you know, if you're playing it just for a paycheck, that wouldn't really work, I guess, or if you're playing it just for the entertainment value of, like, you know, turn on, shut your brain off, have fun, and then stop. I'm not saying those are necessarily wrong ways to play games, but I would say that wouldn't, to me, make you a gamer in the sense that you're not really getting that connection. You're not getting something out of it, and it's not like, it's not something that's so important to you that it is something you'd use to actually partially define who you are. And obviously you don't want to completely be defined by being a gamer. That's a little ridiculous. But it's one of those things where it's like, you know, maybe you have a job and that kind of defines you, and you have like some like other interests you're really passionate about, and those would probably also kind of define you. Like, for example, like if you're like a history buff, or, you know, any kind of buff essentially. If you're like a history buff, you wouldn't have to have that be your job. You wouldn't have to, you know, you have a thing where you just like had a history class and you're like, yeah, I'm a history buff, but like it's something, no, you're like, I really love hearing about like history and learning about it, and like I'm making a connection with these things that are happening, and it's a way that you connect, and it's a way you get something out of that. You connect with these experiences. They're not just something that passively happen around you, kind of, and you're like, that's a thing I did, and now I'm done with that thing. You know, it means something to you, and I think that's the difference to me between somebody who happens to play games and who someone who actually is a gamer who's getting something out of it. I mean, it's the same thing with like movies. You know, you wouldn't be a film buff just because you go to the movies every weekend. You know, if you're just going and shoveling popcorn in your face and shutting your brain off, that can be fun and that can be useful to you. It can be a helpful way to relax and just blow off steam, just have fun. But if you're not making that kind of connection, if it's not like a deep rooted like part of you, maybe you're not a film buff. You're just someone who has seen a lot of movies. And even myself, I like to think that I at least pay attention enough where like I'm getting something out of a movie, but I wouldn't call myself a film buff either because it's not super important to me that I keep watching films and then I keep getting things out of them. I'm not quite as active in it as I am with something like video games, where I feel like all these experiences are coming together and they're all like part of this ongoing, like I'm kind of learning and growing and making connections with these games as I'm thinking about them and as my life is changing and all this other shit. It's like pretty important to me. That's why I would call myself a gamer. And then you'll have like again, like just for another example, like say you wouldn't really necessarily call yourself a bird watcher just because you've seen birds outside flying by before. Like I happen to have seen some birds today. That doesn't make me a bird watcher. That makes me somebody who saw birds. I don't know what the birds were. I don't really care to know. I just saw them flying by, and I was like, oh, look, birds. That doesn't make me a bird watcher. That just makes me somebody who saw birds. Just because I played video games doesn't mean that I'm a gamer. So, like, it's the same kind of thing. And, again, that's just, as I've said up front, and I'll repeat it, it's just my own kind of definition of it, a very loose thing of, like, it's very subjective anyway. And it's, like, also a thing of, like, making that connection with it. That's not really for anyone else to say if you're making that connection with it or not. That's up to you to decide if you think you're really making that connection, or it's up to you to decide, what your own personal definition of a gamer is, and if you do or do not fit into that definition that you have created and accepted for yourself. And that's just something I thought was interesting to talk about just because I hear it talked about so much, and instead of having some kind of staunch stance of like, here are the checklist items that you have to fulfill. And also, I think the other thing that brought it up too is I saw a video talking about it where they were kind of bringing up, like, they were kind of poo-pooing it if you were like playing games for your, a job. If you're like a reviewer or you just, happen to cover game content, whatever, and that's like how you make your money. It's like, well, I would say that I wouldn't necessarily discount that. I wouldn't necessarily say that's invalid just because you happen to also get paid for it. Like, you can get paid to do what you love if you love your job. You can do that. That works out fine. It doesn't need to take away from what you're doing if you're not just doing it to get paid. But if you weren't making those connections and getting stuff out of it, to me, you wouldn't be a gamer. You're just getting a paycheck. You're just doing it because that's what generates money. But yeah, it depends on your own personal preferences and what you think and what have you, and it's very, very subjective. So I just thought those were my 2 cents, and what I thought about the idea, the concept as a whole, and what you guys think as a gamer, or if you how you feel about it, all the interesting stuff for this conversation. Go ahead and leave that in the comments. I'd like to have some back and forth on it. I think that'd be fun. And maybe we can come to maybe a better definition within our little community here of. It's not like a ton of people watch the show, I guess, but, if you guys are watching and you're interested in that kind of a topic, that kind of a thing, go ahead and, like, throw out some ideas and maybe, it can expand my personal definition for me. Maybe I can help you guys flesh out thoughts for yours, and, maybe we can just kind of at least breed some semblance of an understanding on the whole matter, so it doesn't have to be some weird thing where it's, like, some kind of strange internet cultural warfare happening. That's just bizarre. Leave that in the comments. And yeah, what's the deal with being a gamer? It's like being a bird watcher with the ground. What's the deal with Sam? What's the deal?